Even the best moments this record has to offer, I think, pale very much in comparison to King Gizzard's discography highlights thus far. I love the idea of this potential direction, but the band just doesn't really go that far down the road to pull the full potential out of it. If Butterfly 3000 is the sound of anything, I think it's just barely scratching the surface. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this one.
And the guitars on there, the solos sound a little funny.
Funny?
Funny. You know, they
funny?
sound a little,
Funny?
they sound squacky.
Squawky. Squawky.
Squacky.
Is that it?
Strang 5.
Despite that, I think that King Gizzard are recording and penning some of their most fantastic instrumental bits in their entire career. The album, again, has been released with such a glaring and obvious flaw to it, an annoying flaw to it, that I'm just surprised got completely overlooked and left on the record. It's just kind of like the definition of overkill. I'm feeling the lightest of 6s on this album. At the end of the day, I just wish it sounded better, or that sonically it reinforced the sounds and ideas of the rest of the record. At the end of the day, this thing really kind of sounds like leftover ideas from the first Microtonal album in 2017. So yeah, I think this is an okay record. If the band decides to dip into the Microtonal thing again, I hope they come through with some stronger ideas, a better recording, more memorable songs, and also come through with ways to just expand it so it doesn't sound like they're reiterating what they've always done or just coming through with a weaker version of the same thing. Feeling a strong 6 on this one. Just kind of seems like, again, they're returning to stuff that's worked for them in the past, and we're getting varying degrees of success here and there. See it in a way as maybe a large, fun retrospective before we move on to another idea, another concept, another thing. I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7 on this one. I love that once again the band was able to stick to their goal of making all the tracks seamlessly segue musically into each other, which makes the record feel like a very holistic experience. I think this one is pretty good. It's not my favorite in the series, but it is a fun, psych, microtonal rock adventure. Feeling a light to decent 7 on this one. Really just dishing out some garage rock or psych rock cliches on a bland track, sort of like on the song Bitter Boogie. But aside from that, I think this is a really good, fun album, and if you are into folk rock, psych rock, garage rock, but with a kind of melodic edge to it, and a lot of dynamics, a lot of musical flavor, not so much aggressive, but instead nuanced, then I think this album is worth a listen. I'm feeling a decent to strong 7 on this thing. However, I did come away from this album appreciating more things than I didn't. I liked how ambitious and sort of long and expansive the composition of this album as a whole is. And I certainly appreciate the record for being so meditative, being so linear, and being one of the more psychedelic records in the band's catalog. I don't think it's the best album the band has released this year, but it's certainly on the higher end of things in my opinion. I'm feeling a decent to strong 7 on this thing. I still think the band has pulled together a great crop of tracks. The performances, the production, the writing are all there. And outside of a few songs that came off to me as being a little mild or a little redundant, like they could have just fit on previous records, King Gizzard is still delivering some of their most interesting material yet. They still remain to be one of the best and most intriguing and most exciting bands in rock today. And I am feeling a decent to strong 7 on this album. Overall, I think this is a very interesting record. I think lyrically there's a smart concept to it. I think instrumentally and musically there is a smart concept to it. Sure, the execution on a few tracks leaves a lot to be desired, or, you know, just a few songs that I think are really underwhelming. Still, I think King Gizzard delivers some of their best material to date, and I love that the band is continuing to stay creative, stay on the cutting edge, and make something old sound new again, and essentially just doing things that their contemporaries in the rock genre wouldn't dare to do at this point. I'm feeling a decent 2 strong 7 on this one. Now the closing cut, Glee 710, is an interesting moment because on this one lyrically I feel like this is where a lot of the themes so far on the record kind of culminate, are tied together, make the record's lyrical concepts feel a bit more complete and finalized because we are revisiting them all again. And sure, while to an extent the track is making it all make sense, by that same token, I feel like the message of the song overtakes the tune itself a little bit. I don't find this track to be as appealing groove-wise or melody-wise as many other songs here. In fact, I think the lyrical proclamations that switch off with the jammier passages on the track back and forth are a wee bit awkward, and it all plays out at this really unsatisfying pace, honestly. So yeah, while it does add to the concept, weakest cut on this thing by far. Still enjoyed the record quite a bit overall and would handily give this thing a decent 7 out of 10. It's just not as fire from front to back as I hoped that it would be. But still, quite a few fun tracks on this record. Some of the most fun cuts King Gizzard has dropped in a while. Doesn't start or finish as strong as I hoped it would, but a lot of good points in the middle. A lot of good points in the middle, and could easily hand this thing a decent 2 strong 7. I think there's something really ambitious about a very simple, cut and dry, 2-track, 30-minute release. Because, yeah, ultimately I feel like the limitations the band put on themselves with this release kind of forced them to do some cool creative stuff. Now, with the setup of this album being so direct as it is, maybe there's not as much to analyze or pull apart, but I still think Laminated Denim stands as a serious highlight in this current era of King Gizzard's discography, and would easily slip this thing a light 8. Hopefully the next album that they drop later this year provides another experiment, another concept, another idea, because I do have this sneaking suspicion that they really drove this concept to its limits, or at least the limits that the band would push it to. I'm not sure if dipping down again into this well will provide another great record, not unless the band started to really revamp how they structure and compose their songs. But I guess we'll see, since I'm guessing a good deal of the material on these 3 or 4 albums that are forthcoming hasn't even been finished yet. I'm feeling a light to decent 8 on this record. For what few moments on this record that there are where I think the band could have shot for more originality, generally the concept, the production, and the sheer songwriting talent shown throughout the entire LP, that is enough to make up for that and then some. There are times when I do wish that Rat's Nest was a bit more robust narratively and adventurous sonically, but god damn, this thing is still a really great record, and easily one of the most fun and throttling projects the band has drawn up so far. I'm feeling a strong 8 on this thing. I'm really loving this record. It's a pretty creative album and a great use of the fact that in the digital age, you can throw a record like this into your iPhone or whatever you play music on, you know, just digital ones and zeros, so on and so forth, and literally just loop the album forever without interruption. So creating a record that makes use of that function, makes use of that ability for people to do that, and executes that so well, I think is great. I'm feeling a strong 8 on this album.